To give us more of an insight of what went on within the Finger of God Church, Mark Pichache is here himself in the studio. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Belinda.
I know this is a bit of a difficult time for you. I must start by asking you, how do you feel seeing your former pastor having been arrested and spending the night in cell?
I must say this is one of the most difficult things I've ever faced in life. It's close to attending a funeral that never ends. We want to bury this thing, but it continues to go on with more details being unraveled. So it's painful for us. Yes.
You were third in command, Hellon and someone else, and then you.
Yes, yes.
Tell us, how exactly did the church run?
The church ran by a committee of 23, as I said before. After Hellon, there was Alan Odada, then there was myself. We ran the ministry. We used to teach before Hellon came on stage and all these things. So the church used to run as per normal, as I said before. It's only when Quincy showed up that things changed. And I think it needs to be said that Joseph Hellon is not a bad man. I'm not against him. He's a friend of mine. What I think needs to happen is the church can't be rescued. It's Quincy who came in and brought all these issues to the church.
You're saying that the church ran normally. First of all, you held your service. Where did you hold your services?
The services were at Lenana Conference Center up to 3 weeks ago. The church was at Lenana Conference Center. No more service, no more praise and worship, no more preaching. Everything was fine.
Did you live in the house in Runda?
No, I used to frequent it a lot, but I did not live there.
Who used to live there?
There were lots of people. There were some church members who used to live there and some relatives of Hellon as well.
Yeah, that's where now the question comes in for other Christians who are also watching, wondering why did church members live in the home? What exactly were they doing in the house that they had to live there?
The explanation we were given by Hellon, which I tend to believe, was the people needed help. They needed counseling, they needed help. Esther is a relative of Hellon's. So to us that was nothing suspicious because we were told he's her uncle, actually.
Esther and Hellon are related?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we were told.
That's what you were told?
Yes.
And so what was going on? Why did they have to stay there for counseling? Was it a kind of rehab?
Yes, that is what Hellon made it to be, that it was a place where people would come for help, which is okay, provided nothing sinful, nothing wrong is going on. And I think that's what also needs to be made very clear. It's only wrong if members who used to live in that house can step up and say that Hellon did anything wrong. Because I personally don't find anything wrong with people being helped. However, if the help then turns to abuse, then there's something to speak about. But if Hellon has not abused anyone, if no one has stepped up to say they have been abused, I don't see anything wrong with what happened.
Some allegations of what happened in the house has raised eyebrows within the Christian denomination. For example, taking the Holy Communion and the wine and salt several times a day. Is that accurate or not?
Well, that happened after Benny Hinn and for a quote-unquote Benny Hinn and Quincy Timberlake showed up. That's when copious amounts of communion are being taken. I only saw that happen once because that was just before I was kicked out of the church because of questioning the same.
Okay, now let's go into why you were kicked out. You said when you went to question the doctrine that Quincy came with, that is when you were automatically excommunicated. When did you leave the church?
We left the church about 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago?
Yes.
Were you the first batch of people to leave the church?
We were the first batch.
Please give us in detail the process of how when you went to talk to Hellon made you get the word excommunicated from the church.
The first thing we realized is Quincy had come into the church with a lot of lies, with a lot of doctrines that were not biblical, speaking about issues with sexuality, issues with making a lot of money through certain deals that were not exactly clear, which we questioned, and after we questioned this particular said deals, we were consequently excommunicated from the church.
Give us an example of a deal.
For example, saying that Hellon has been nominated for the Oscars, yet he's a musician.
Really?
Yes. It's on tape actually that he was nominated for the Oscars while only musicians nominated for Grammys. So when you question such things, among other things, is when we got kicked out.
With his doctrine, like the sexual doctrine you're talking about, having to take herbs, did those congregation have to practice those doctrines?
No, it was not. It had not yet started being practiced. That's why I said Finger of God was not a cult. It was a fine church. It was okay. It's still okay. Even the members who are going through this know it's not a cult. It's only when Quincy showed up, which is about a month and a half ago, when he showed up and started bringing such doctrine, that's when the leadership stood up and we said, no, this cannot be allowed to continue, at which point is when we were excommunicated. Yes.
If Quincy has been around for only a month and a half, first of all, what was his role in the church, and how come he had so much power?
Okay. The reason why he had so much power is he was Hellon's friend. He was very close to Hellon. So when he came in, he had influence over Hellon. So whatever he said to Hellon carried the day. Of course, with the promises and the things that he came in saying that would be made possible with a partnership between him and Hellon. Yes.
Were you aware that the Finger of God Church here is not associated with the branch in South Africa and in America?
Yes, I was very aware of the fact.
You've always been aware of it.
I was aware of it. I asked Hellon about it. He told me it's been registered locally in Kenya. Yes.
Okay. So this Quincy, with all his powers, so basically what you're saying is he's the cause of all these problems, and he is turning. Are you still calling it a church, or what do you think it has turned into now?
I'll say this, and I'll say this categorically, that the church will only turn into a cult, because it's not a cult if the teachings that Quincy has come in with continue to be taught.
But they're being taught in practice now.
They've been taught once. If it continues like that, then the church will turn into a cult, because what we built from the ground up was not a cult. It's not a cult. I said before, there was no bloodletting. There are no cultic activities involved in the church. What needs to be made clear is that these things are of recent events. They're not from the past.
So apart from being Hellon's friend, what was his role in the church precisely?
Before 2 weeks ago, he had no role in the church.
Okay, just an advisor of some sort.
Just a friend of Hellon's. So as such, when he came in, then he started maneuvering himself and positioning himself towards leadership in the church, which we didn't have a problem with. The problem was the doctrine that was being taught. It's a doctrinal issue. It's not a personal issue between Hellon and Esther. It's not that. It's about doctrine, and doctrine that can be restored and needs to be restored.
Benny Hinn, did you really believe, or is it true, because they've refuted claims of having any kind of connection with Finger of God or Joseph Hellon, yet Joseph Hellon claims that Benny Hinn has been his spiritual leader since 1996. Were you aware of this arrangement?
Those were some of the things, Belinda, that we told Hellon about, because the emails we were receiving, some of which I have copies of which in my own inbox, when he sent me forwarded, Hellon himself forwarded for me a message. Those things are false. If you read them, the English they're written in, the kind of context, the speech that is put there, the doctrine that is put there is completely wrong.
But Hellon claims he's been receiving these emails for many months, even before Quincy came into the picture. Were you aware of this?
Well, Benny Hinn writes emails to anyone. It's a mailing list. You join the mailing list, you send him gifts, and you will be receiving messages from him. But
Hellon stated that he was receiving instruction from Benny Hinn on how to run the church.
The instructions only surfaced after Quincy surfaced.
After Quincy surfaced?
Yes, the allegations of those instructions only surfaced after Quincy surfaced.
Well, you are one of the leaders. A lot of the congregation members are watching this, and they're feeling cheated, baffled, and wondering what's going on. If you could just take a look at the camera and just briefly tell them, briefly, if you look into that camera, very briefly tell them what's in your heart.
All right. To the members of the church that we were in Finger of God Ministries, I want you to know that 98% of what you learned was true. There is still hope. We are going to reconstruct this thing. It's not cultic yet. It's not too far gone. There is still hope. Persevere. We're going to stand. And as we stand, we're going to make a brighter future for us and for all of us. This is a hitch, and it will come to an end.
Well, Mark Pichache, thank you so much for explaining to us as best as you could what was going on in the Finger of God Church. And Joseph Hellon had agreed to come in tonight on Sunday Live to tell us what, from his very own words, what actually goes on in his church. But unfortunately, he got arrested, but our invitation is still open to him if he does come out.